The Intellectual Gentlemen's Club.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are at episode 14 with Matt Staggs. Appreciate you guys joining us once again. If you're tuning in for the first time, thanks, and you can check our archives for our blend of eclectic guests. But today we're going to be brought to you by information. There's a ton of it out there, so you really have to wade through some of that bullshit out there. So whenever you can, just do some research on whatever information you're pulling, so you know that you're getting something good out there. Today, our affiliate sponsors again are Amazon.com and Onnit.com. If you go to our website and go to the links right on there, anything you purchase within that portal gives us a cut of that. You guys, it doesn't come out of your pocket at all. It just comes out of the gross figure, I guess, for our sponsors there. So we appreciate any support you guys might want to do with that. We also have a direct PayPal button on the website, intellectualgentlemensclub.com. Any donations in there are appreciated. I think I still have a few stickers left, so anybody that donates on there, I can send a few of those out to you. I appreciate that. Today, I just want to let you guys know out there that I am co-hostless today for the first time. So going solo, it's been a busy summer. Everybody's got hectic schedules and things like that. So here we are, solo. I'm Jason Abbott, and we have Matt Staggs as our guest today. He is a recently self-employed individual who hails from Brandon, Mississippi. He is a writer, a blogger. He is the booking agent for the Joe Rogan Experience. He is the web content editor for disinfo.com and host of the Disinfo Cast. He has a lot of interesting people on that one as well. He has a BS in psychology from the University of Southern Mississippi. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, Jason, glad to join you here, and I really appreciate you having me on. I'm neither an intellectual nor a gentleman, but I'm going to try my very best. So,
yeah, like I tweeted you, man, it's a very loose term. If you guys go to the our site, the intellectualgentlemensclub.com, we have an about tab, and I have a little description in there on what we're all about, and it really came up as a sarcastic type of name. A buddy of mine, we're just sitting in the backyard. Having some beers over a fire. Yeah, and we just coined it that. We always thought about, an English fellow in a high wingback chair with a monocle and a glass of scotch, and we just thought it was kind of bullshit that somebody's labeled an intellectual that has a formal education and things like that. And there's a lot of free thinkers out there that have a lot to bring to the table. So intellectual, like I said, is a very loose term. So... Well, I wanted to talk to you about a couple things today. I don't know how much time we're going to have. I know you got a busy schedule on your plate, as do I. But why don't you tell us what you've been up to?
You should have been like, I know you have a busy schedule, as do I. So don't waste my fucking time, Staggs.
That's true. That's true.
So go ahead, hit me.
All right, cool. Well, recently you left your 9-to-5 job, and I just wanted to see how everything was going with that. It seems like you're a much happier individual. Seems like you spread your wings with a bunch of different things. So how's that journey been for you?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I think work in the senses it's practiced today in most of America is a very, very dysfunctional thing. It's very sick.
Yeah.
We have a lot of automation, computers. We're no longer tied to geographic locations, yet we insist on keeping most people in airless, sunless, tight little
cubicles.
crypts. Yeah. And, or whatever. And, we can easily have more leisure time if we were just willing to work with less, if
Sure.
we weren't insistent upon wreaking every single penny out of our economy and out of the sweat of other people's brows as possible. And I never quite fit into that sort of environment. I can be self-admittedly, I'm kind of a prankster and free thinker in my own way. And I get bored with just, the daily rigmarole. I've joked before, and it's probably a lot of truth in it, that, creatively, I'm like some sort of like weird amphibian, that has to spend some time submerged in the imagination,
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
I understand
I
completely.
can, surface occasionally and grab a few gulps of reality, but I'm best, soaking in imagination and weird ideas. And, fortunately, imagination and weird ideas has been good to me. I'm able to pay my mortgage, and maybe I'm not going out to eat as often, or, I can't just buy everything that crosses my mind. But, the fact is that I can spend all day and as much of the night as I can spare writing and pursuing things that interest me.
So you can basically hashtag that with priorities.
Oh yeah, it's human priorities.
Yeah.
I think Buckminster Fuller wrote a lot about the fact that we should our primary job should not be our job; it should be education. And I don't mean that necessarily in a formal sense, although. If you could go back to school and think about it, I mean, if you could pursue something, if you had enough time to grab focus yourself and grab an education in what interested you rather than a society that insists on putting you in a cog, and you wouldn't have to worry about student loans. Think about it, how wonderful that would be. I'd probably go back tomorrow and get a degree in anthropology, if I could, but.
Yeah, we'd have some surging innovations if that was the case, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. And again, I mean, why do we have all this stuff? And some of it I certainly understand, but it's also the idea that, well, are you willing to pay a little more? Well, I'm willing to pay a little more to have a society that's focused on creativity and innovation and free time for people's families and, the process of discovering who they are and being happy. That's worth whatever.
Sure. So during your new self-employment here, what kind of adventures are you on? So how are you paying the bills now?
Well, crystal meth dealing is not nearly as lucrative nor exciting as I thought. No, I am doing a lot of stuff on the side. I write a lot more for several book blogs that have been kind enough to keep me employed over the years, and I do a lot more in podcasting. And, and I'm always on disinfo.com. I'm constantly putting content on there, interacting with our audience, which, I always say this, and I do not mean to kiss ass, but we have a great crowd of regulars there that, when I came aboard, one of the things that was a big priority for me was keeping a troll-free place to talk.
Sure. That's really important.
Yeah. And it's funny. Recently I had a guy, I assume a guy, that was a neo-Nazi and came on and left a whole bunch of neo-Nazi crap and white separatist garbage on our website. So I deleted all and blocked him, goodbye, you're not wanted here anymore.
Yeah.
So he emails me back claiming that he was angry that we said we supported free speech. Well, the thing is that it's your free speech to the extent that I can't keep an atmosphere that other people feel comfortable and happy participating in. And the irony of a neo-Nazi talking about censorship, it's like delicious to me. That sort of tone deaf irony is just like freaking pollen to a bee, man. I just love it.
Yeah.
So,
actually,
everybody's got to make those sort of standards or you end up with a place. There's a lot of crazy people that want attention and will do anything to get it and love to destroy things. So you've got to make some decisions. I think of it this way, man. I mean, you're not going to come in my yard,
right.
and start talking shit about me or insulting my friends that are, different colors, from me or whatever. And I keep saying this, just because you and I share a relative skin tone, it does not make us kin,
Yeah. Well, you seem real closed-minded about that, Matt. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got plenty of, friends from all different backgrounds and especially online and in person too, through jiu-jitsu. It's, one of the guys that I roll with a lot, he's a kickboxing instructor too. He jokes about it. He calls us like, we got the Rainbow Coalition up in here. And he's right, man. I mean, you got everybody.
Why not?
And we're all united by
more the merrier, I think.
And it's that sort of thing. And sorry if I'm going off on too many tangents here, but there was a story recently, news item, and I know it sounds like the typical, well, no shit kind of thing, but, it's important to do these kind of scientific studies to confirm stuff we hold as common wisdom, because for common wisdom, a while you thought you could cure a cold by keeping a frog in your mouth for a little while. So there was a story that basically showed people could develop empathy and fondness for other people of different backgrounds through shared interests, that basically, you come from a different place, I come from a different place. We may be completely different, but that one thing that we're both into, be it a TV show, book, or, a hobby, or we both share, some other kind of thing, is enough for us to start a dialogue and to kind of rewire past the cognitive blinders that you look at a different ethnicity or religion or whatever, and you go, well, that guy or gal is this or that or this. It's enough to kind of start going, hey, wait a minute, you're all right, man. I like you, and hey, maybe I should rethink some of the other stupid shit that I've been taught.
Yeah, for sure, man. I actually had to deal with my first troll, and I think I started doing the podcast probably about 6 months ago or so, maybe a little longer, but I started the Facebook page and the Twitter and all that stuff, and I knew it was only a matter of time, and the more people that get in there, the more personalities you have, obviously something's going to have to give at some point. So I usually just put on these quotes in the morning. It's just some kind of inspirational quotes, no big deal. And this guy seems to nitpick every now and then he kind of fired off, and finally I had to ban my first person, man. So I banned the troll.
On Twitter, especially as far as my own Twitter
so much more personal.
I suffer no fools, and I feel very strongly about the need to, protect your own happiness and your sense of sanity. You can't be everything to everyone. And occasionally you're going to run into people that are just assholes from your perspective, or just, you're incompatible with. And I've got my life and you've got yours. And if I have to put a fence between us for me to stay sane and not dissolve into some kind of neurotic puddle, which, if you start listening to every hater that comes along, you can, no matter how strong you are, I've got to occasionally show you the door. So,
yeah, you were talking about empathy, and there's a lot of information out there that you can get access to, but I think a lot of people, especially the religious types, have this indication that if you're not religious, you lack empathy. And I think if you're lacking empathy, you're just an asshole, not necessarily you're lacking God.
Right. And some people, and certainly empathy is some part taught, because you can certainly be taught not to be empathetic, I think. But it's also, I think there's some neurological components as well. Some people are less empathetic than others. I understand people on the autism spectrum disorder have a hard time sometimes interpreting emotions,
sure,
and things like that. And so somebody might come across as not being appropriately sympathetic or empathetic, and they may just, be from a different place. Of course, some people express their emotions differently. My wife, I've been married for
careful here, Matt. Careful.
No, it's okay. I've been married for 16 years and lived with her for, fair number of years before that. So I've been together with her for well over 2 decades. But, and it's funny when you have a really good relationship, you start to kind of develop a, shared cultural history, of things that are important to both of you.
Of course, yeah.
You start to kind of understand each other's way of communicating a lot more. At first, my wife isn't a person that will say, I'm sorry necessarily, but she will. You just have to kind of look for what she's saying. She may make a few jokes. She may make amends some way, but as far as like saying, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, it's not necessarily going to be what you can expect to hear. It's just, you've got to be, got to have eyes and ears to understand that this person is saying that. And there's plenty of examples,
I think that's more of a Mars and Venus issue than
it could
probably
be.
just an issue with your wife.
Well,
I think that happens.
But no, I mean, I don't.
lines.
Yeah, well, the communication thing certainly, but I know plenty of guys that won't say they're sorry, and
Sure.
I think saying you're sorry can be powerful medicine, man. I mean, not only
I
for
do
you, but you want to talk about something that can really stop a lot of conflicts. Going, just look, I mea culpa, my bad, I fucked up, and I'm sorry I said this or did this, and it's hard. I mean, there's a little part of you that like, fuck that. No, because, you don't want to open yourself up, because once you do, you open the door to further criticism and the worst thing about that is that sometimes you do run into someone that's like, well, fuck your apology, which, I mean, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes these things happen. Sometimes you do something horrible that may not deserve forgiveness, or someone does.
Well, the thing is also with an apology, you can't go into it expecting that it's going to be forgiven or it's not a real apology. You know, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, but I think
you have to put yourself out there. If you're going to apologize, you're going to have to, you know, come to terms with what you've done. And, you know, sometimes
right.
people can accept that and others that can't, you know.
Yeah, and so there's an important. I completely agree. It's as important for you as for the other person, but there's also the idea that it's a constant process of self examination, and if you feel you owe someone an apology and you've done every effort to make amends, and then consider it a lesson learned and move on. You can't just and I'm the worst about this. I'm the biggest hypocrite in the world when it comes to like letting things go. And I don't mean this in a vengeful sort of way, because my friends and my wife will tell you I'm the worst in the world at holding a grudge. You could say something to me, and then like a week later go, look, man, I'm sorry. And a lot of times I'll go, okay, or I'll start saying, I could be talking about, yeah, Jason's not a bad guy. He just meant ... And surely some part of that is just my sense of forgiveness, but probably the majority is just, sort of low self-esteem and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, you've just got to kind of, I guess, let it go. But sometimes, I'm the kind of guy, you say something to me and I will instantly blame myself a lot of times,
Yeah.
And I had a friend of mine that I had friends for a while, been friends with for a while, that had some problems. And, I knew this, he knew this, and he snapped off at me about something and told me to get lost. So I did, okay, all right, wish you well, but I got to go. And for like a week after that, I just neurotically tumbled it around in my head going, what did I do?
I'm such an asshole, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, even my wife was like, look, no, you're not. I mean, what you did is he told you to leave, and he's even told you before he has this problem. So, move past it and move on. So.
Yeah, people are people, man, and you never know how someone's going to react to something. Sometimes you even think you know somebody, and they'll throw you for a loop completely. So
yeah, and yeah, I mean, all of us are that way. I'm the first to tell you that I'm a weird guy, and I think we all have our demons, and it's just a process of getting to know your demons and dealing with the ones you can, and with the rest just realizing when they start to pop up and how they're influencing you. I've had those moments before. It's like, hey, are you really reacting to this because it bothers you, or are you reacting to it because this is something you learned when you were like 14 when this thing happened to you?
Right.
And sometimes it does make a difference.
Yeah, I was reading one of your blog posts the other day on Savudu.
Yeah.
It's titled, "It's Not Easy Having a Weird Brain in a Normal World, but Sometimes It Pays Off." And I know I've heard you on a couple different podcasts talking about when you were growing up and how you were bullied and, called names and things like that. And I suffered through a lot of that myself. So how do you think that has affected you as a man when you grew up? Do you think that gave you more empathy, or did that give you kind of some fuel to...
It affected me in a lot of different ways. For a while I carried a lot of anger and insecurity, especially when I was a lot younger. There's a part of you that just wants to retreat from pain and instead pretend that that's okay. You're a superior person, and, fuck those guys. And, I mean, let's go, go put on a Marilyn Manson album or whatever, and, read some Nietzsche and hate people. And obviously a lot of hate is based in fear and insecurity. And I was there for a while, and I did, though. And did realize I was just scared of people, scared of me, and dealing with a lot of anger and fear. And it made me, I was very insecure, and it pretty much guided the course of my life. That, along with my, upbringing, my dad drank himself to death, mother, drug addict from get-go, super, super crazy abusive. So, and part of it, I blame on my environment. That and the school I went to was super duper very much centered on athletics and
hyper masculinity, right?
Yeah, right. And
Sure.
And anybody that didn't fit that mold, like like me, this wiry, thin little guy playing D&D and wearing a Megadeth t-shirt was screwed. And back then, teachers and counselors got away with a lot more asshole-ish stuff. They could pretty much make fun of you in front of the students, and it wouldn't be a problem because nobody was going to sue. Nobody was going to, they weren't scared of you coming back with a rifle.
Right.
So yeah, and so
Yeah, it's
I went through a
unfortunate.
lot of that stuff. But
Yeah.
as I got older, I started kind of digging more into my subconscious, and I think getting help helped a lot because I was suffering with a lot of like major depression and anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder, and these are still kind of factors in my own life.
Hmm.
But getting help, enabling myself to kind of like turn off some of the emotional turmoil and step back and look at where I am and where I come from. I realized that, now you're right. I do have a great deal more empathy. I used to really want people to like me, and that was where I came from as far as like, well, those guys reject you, but I like you, so you're going to like me. But as an adult, I just have a lot of empathy, or I try to, for people that are hurt or bullied. If you want to, and I shouldn't say this, but let's just put it this way. I have a couple of buttons, and I hate that expression. When you say someone's pushing my buttons or you're pushing my buttons, it clearly indicates that you're taking responsibility for your own emotions away from you. You're saying, well, now you're doing this. It's not up to me if I explode and act like an asshole because you're the one that pushed my buttons. But I can be provoked just like anybody. And a lot of that does have to do with bullying. I've gotten a lot better because I can step back and go, well, it's okay. But you're an adult now, but also just seeing other people bullied or hurt or animals, animals or children. I mean, anybody that can be kind of pushed down by someone else with a lot more power than they do through no fault of their own. I'm pretty much on your side almost always.
Right. So you're basically always for the underdog then, right?
Yeah. And it's like
So
kind of, I've
way.
always seen myself as that way, even when I'm not, I guess. But, I come from a background as seeing myself as a, scrappy proto-mammal surrounded by dinosaurs as far as where I came from. I was kind of on top of a lot of the stuff that's popular now when I was a kid, like computers. And, it's funny, people, you go into Target and, you walk through sections of clothing sections and apparel, and they'll have stuff that says nerd or geek, like it's something to be proud of.
Yeah.
Instead of, something that got your ass kicked.
That's funny. I wanted to talk to you about that. There's some, the words that are used that they throw around, geek, nerd, things like that. It was so scary to me when I was in high school that I actually wanted to be a scientist back in the day. And to a large degree, I still do. Things like that really interest me. And that's where I find myself looking at different websites and checking things out. It's real interesting. But I think a big reason why I didn't go for that degree outside of like education was that I did not want to be labeled as a nerd or a geek my entire life. And looking back at that, it's one of the great tragedies because I don't know how other many people feel that way. But I always thought of a scientist as somebody with the pocket protector and the glasses that were taped in the middle and the guy that had no friends and such like that. And that was the guy I didn't want to be. But when you're younger, you don't really take into consideration that that's a stereotype. And when you get older, you understand that, we both know Daniele Bolelli, and he's got, the book Create Your Own Religion. And basically
he loves to be called Debo, no matter
Debo.
what he says. Insist on calling him Debo.
But, you can take that to anything in your life. Anytime you want to create your life or create, any type of situation in the world, you take the best of what is out there to offer, and you don't have to follow one specific dogma and be locked down to something. So, it's in hindsight, that's one of the things I kind of missed out on. But, as I grow older and as I'm doing this podcast, it allows me to talk to a lot of interesting people and research a lot of interesting things. So it's all working out in the end. I don't think I would take anything back just because I like where I'm going in life. But it's interesting that when people are growing up, it's so hard. I have a daughter that's about to hit middle school, and I'm a little concerned about her because it's that age where it just shit starts getting weird, man. And people will jump on bandwagons and they kind of get that mob mentality. And I just want to instill in my kids, especially, that you don't have to be like that.
Yeah, and it's hard to get that message. And it's something I was writing about this recently, the paradox of adolescence, that you at this time want so badly to be your own person, yet to be accepted.
Right.
And it is weird. I don't know if things are better now for kids. When I was a kid, there was no internet. So if you were a weird guy or gal, you didn't fit in, you really were shit out of luck, especially if you lived in a small town.
Well, I think that goes two different ways. I was talking with the last podcast we did. We were talking about anti-bullying, and he's a big supporter of that as well.
Yeah.
But we were talking is when you're in that type of situation nowadays, you have the internet and you can't really escape. Like upon a time without the internet, you could go home and you could unplug and you're away from that. Well, it follows through Facebook, it follows through Twitter, it follows all across. So it's almost inescapable.
So people will find you and just torture you. Yeah, sure. Instead of like the kind of things I dealt with, which is like getting spat on, pushed around, called faggot every day. And I'm sorry for using that word, but
it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. I got called faggot every day, and had stuff written about me in the school newspaper that I guess teachers thought was chuckalicious and just let fly. Prank calls at my house, getting beat up some. I guess that would have been really bad if I was on Facebook and had the same people just following me at home. So you're right, that is a double-edged sword, and it's one I've thought about before, but kind of maybe considered that, as a net bonus as compared to negative when you looked at it.
Right, the so-called cyberbullying.
Yeah. And there's recently been a case of a young girl that killed herself because of it. She couldn't take it anymore. And I've been there. I've thought about, I've never actually gone through and killed myself, of course, duh. But when I was a kid, I certainly thought about, maybe I'd be happier dead. It's you've got to come to terms with it, I guess. Part of that, of course, is drawing your boundaries. Like I said, defending your own happiness, coming up with an idea what that is and defending it. And I still won't talk to 99 2/3 of the people that I went to high school with. People will come up to me.
Right.
And hey, man, and I block them on Facebook, I block them on Twitter. I don't talk to them if I see them. And maybe that's childish, but I'm just, that's where I am. I mean, I am very important. It's very important to me to make those sorts of, limitations and set those boundaries up, limitations of other people to access me and boundaries on who I think should.
Yeah. My wife is, she's tried to talk me into going to a couple of different high school reunions, and I just keep asking her, like, why? And any of the people who I do want to associate with, I do if they find me on Facebook and, we want to associate together, that's fine. But actually, it's funny because I did an experiment. I ran into one of my childhood bullies from high school. He was a couple years older than me. And in the professional world, I ran into him, and he was still an asshole.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have any power over me at that point, but he wanted to do business and things like that, and it just wasn't going to happen. Was not going to happen. And I also through the same type of deal on Facebook, there was a guy who was trying to hire stuff out, and he is a friend of mine. And this bully was responding to him about, hey, hook me up with a job and things like that. So I called him right away. I'm like, look, man, it's not the kind of guy you want to be dealing with, So things like that can haunt you. And a lot of people, they do change, and I think it's important to probably give them a shot.
Right,
but
right. I mean,
I'm not going to be hitting a reunion anytime soon. It just doesn't interest me. I have a new breed of people that I like to hang with, and
me too. But and you're right. People do change, and in some cases, I just have to say, well, I hope so, and I wish you the best.
Yeah, that's great too.
But our time together is over. I didn't choose to be around you. I might, it was just luck of the draw. That's where I lived, and that's where I had to go, and that's who I spent time with. And, people will say, well, you've not forgiven and you've not moved on. And I feel that I have, to the extent that I have. And, I'm comfortable with it. And
it doesn't cause you any turmoil. So at that point, you are kind of moving on.
Yeah. Occasionally, and dealing with these sorts of things and the other things in your life and becoming what you want to be and thinking about who you are, what you like as part of a lifelong process. Carl Rogers, the humanist psychologist, wrote a lot about self-actualization. And it's that, I think it's doing the work that you're required to do to get along and function at your best. And just following it through for the rest of your life. I had hit upon that idea when I was a kid because it seemed like to me the older I got, the more I became more of who I was. I'm sorry, but I still have a shelf full of D&D books. I've read all kinds of different things. I have rubber dinosaurs living on the kitchen counter. And but now it's just that I have friends that understand these things and like them. My wife, I had asked her recently, I passed by the counter and saw the herd of rubber dinosaurs. And I said, how's things doing along with the rubber dinosaurs? How are they getting along? She goes, famously, she was cooking. And I said, oh, yeah, there's no carnivore versus herbivore trouble over there. She said, no, they're creationists, the dinosaurs. They just eat vegetables. And then she just went on cooking, and it's like, why would I possibly have anything to do with a world that doesn't like me or understand me?
Sure. Another thing is, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
Please.
This is fresh in my head here, but when we're talking about, being it when we're as a child, we didn't have like a support structure as far as like the internet or something like that. But nowadays you can reach out, you can find these groups on Facebook or Twitter or find these blogs that you can participate in. And I think it's great where people can find their own individual communities now.
And you go, well, I'm not crazy, or at least there are other people that share my kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's what this is all about too. The whole group of podcasting. Everybody that I've run into in the podcasting world is 110% just totally legit, on the up and up. Nobody's trying to pull any fast one. Everybody's kind of pulling from a point of abundance rather than scarcity. Everybody understands we're all in it together, which is great.
That's true. Yeah. And on top of it, it's, social media has been a gift for me as well. And I don't know about for you, but, it's nice having this, pocket of friends and supporters that you can carry along.
Absolutely.
And, you pull out your phone and go, fuck, this just happened to me. And I'm really feeling down. And suddenly you have a lot of people going, look, I'm sorry. I've been there. By the way, try this. Get with me. I'll talk with you about it. And it's great. I mean, it really has, and it sounds like superficial ass kissing again, but my Twitter people have been a huge lifesaver many, many times. And I've got I don't know, maybe like 6,000 right now, and I don't get to interact with all of them, but I try very hard if someone contacts me to say something back to them.
Sure. Well, switching gears here, I just wanted to talk to you. You're a very well-read guy, it seems like. You go through a lot of books. You're constantly interviewing authors and stuff like that. What primary books would you recommend for the enlightenment of somebody on the basis of the world? Or let's take it one step further. Let's go. Yeah. You're on a desert island. What 5 books would you bring for the rest of your life?
Boy, that is really difficult because I read a lot of different stuff. Sure. I don't know anything about enlightenment. I think there's an idea of personal enlightenment that you can find meaning for yourself, and I can get into that later. But as far as can I talk about that a little bit? Things that are important to me there. Yeah. I think Joseph Campbell's works are important. The Hero with 1,000 Faces, The Power of Myth, and Myths to Live By. Those have been important to me. Carl Jung's Dreams, Memories, and Reflections, and some of his other writings, which can sometimes be a little difficult to wade through, but those have been very important. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. That was a seminal book in my life that I would strongly recommend to anybody trying to wondering where to go, what to do, and why should I keep living. And it's a good one. So those are a few right off.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Fiction, I can talk about that too. Some of my favorite books, fiction-wise, are, and this is just a random bag, and it may not have any meaning to anybody else, but Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, Jonathan Latham's here's another one, Fortress of Solitude, Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club. Those have been pretty important to me, and books I've revisited over the years.
Fight Club is the one book that I read that I wasn't as impressed with from the movie. I saw the movie years ago, and then I read the book probably about a year ago, and I was a little disappointed with it. I don't know exactly why. I can't put it into words. I just thought the movie was so dead nuts on with with what was going on in mainstream culture.
You have to look at the two things as different interpretations, the same idea. That's why I don't usually get too teed off when people do a movie that's different from the book. You just got to keep it as two different things. I think Stephen King said that.
Yeah, normally, you're talking Stephen King, like The Stand. I read that was I went through a period in school where I didn't like to read at all, and in my adult life, I didn't like to read either. And this is probably going back about 10 years ago. My reading abilities just kind of exploded. I don't know what happened. It just got into the books, and I started reading The Stand, which is, a super long novel, especially for somebody who hasn't read in a long time. And
yeah,
I fell in love with that book.
I liked The Stand, but I thought that was one point where Stephen King started his fascination with, and I didn't name this trope, so excuse the language, but it's a trope and a scholarly topic. The magical Negro is what it's called. And the idea being is that there are books written by white authors and about white characters. And I'm no social justice warrior, but I hate cliches, especially. Sure. And but where they use a black character and don't really give the character any dimensionality or motives of their own, except to serve as a point for enlightening the white character.
Interesting. I've not heard that
basically
before.
They turn into basically like a parody figure. That it's like Bagger Vance or.
Right.
Or all these other, there's a great example of this in the remake of Bedazzled, starring Brendan Fraser, which was a fun movie. But in the end, the savior figure is this beatific young black man, which is fine. But again, here's this white character running through everything going, oh, and by the way, not to mean that black characters can't be sources of wisdom. But I think if you're using it in the wrong way, as a, just like a magic wand or a magic mirror that someone picks up and goes, oh, without any kind of personality, dimensionality, or honor of them as a person, then it's a pretty horrible way to do it. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's what was the character in that? The mother something or?
Oh yeah.
It's black grandmother.
Yeah. I can't picture the name, but. Damn it! No, I'm gonna
it's just clumsy, and he's been bad about that. JC and the Green Mile, and I'm not hitting Stephen King, man. I love his stuff, and I have utmost respect for him. He's a great guy, great author, but like all of us, he does certain things that are, that cause me to wonder and question and think. So,
gotcha. Where do you think the country is coming as far as racism lines are coming across? Do you think
I don't know, because I don't
better?
think I'm I don't know, man. I can't tell you that. I think ask some of your other friends. Ask a few black folks, see what they say, or Asians or Hispanics. It's important we're all part of this dialogue, but. Clearly...
We're just a couple white guys talking about racism.
It's going to be disingenuous if I say anything. When we're there, if I say it's getting much worse, people are going to go, what the hell do you know? And by the way, I think that you're, trying to be the good white liberal, which, I hate labels like that. I would not...
Don't pigeonhole me, motherfucker.
Yeah, liberal or conservative.
Right.
I have my own opinions, but... and if I say absolutely not, it's going to be, well, you're a white male and you're pretty comfortable. And I am in some ways. I've had opportunities that other people, black male may not necessarily have gotten. Of course, that goes, it's a not a one-dimensional topic. I think the president's daughters will probably have opportunities I didn't have, So I don't know, man. I don't really know. I can tell you what I do, that I try to be aware of stuff and to treat people well and respect where they're coming from. And it's a two-way street, and I try to be, cognizant of where, my own particular biases, and I hope other people do too.
I think that's all we can do is try and be aware of what our own thoughts are.
I think positive change has to start with the individual. Sure. And in becoming aware of stuff.
As far as the disinfo, how did you get started with that? I know that you're the web editor and all that, and you do contribute. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you do the podcast. How did you get involved in all that?
I had done book publicity for many, many years, working on science fiction novels, fantasy, horror, things like that, and basically when I say book publicity, I mean getting people to, know about the book, review the book, write about it, talk about it. And it's not manipulative. Really, I guess some degree of it is, but, when it's something you're really excited about, which I like all those genres, and you're interacting with other fans and critics and stuff. I mean, and if you have the right idea, and I've always been like, look, if you dig it, great. If not, that's okay too. I'm going to give it to you, and I'll follow back around in a little bit, but I'm not going to throw a temper tantrum if you're not into it. So anyway, yeah, I got started doing that. I developed a reputation for being able to handle weird books, like difficult books that don't fit into genres very easily or have strange ideas.
That's clear by the cast.
So I started doing that. The guys at Disinfo got in touch with me about a book that turned out to be Graham Hancock's Entangled.
Fantastic author.
I worked with Graham on that, and yeah. It's a good book. It didn't.
I love Graham. I can't get enough of him on podcasts for sure.
Yeah, I still blame myself to some degree for that not getting the attention I thought it deserved. But it's hard to. It was hard to pitch to science fiction fantasy people. It was hard to pitch to straight literary people.
Well, he was pigeonholed in that because he was always a nonfiction author, right?
Right, and the nonfiction people found it difficult. So it was a very difficult assignment, but one that I enjoyed doing, and I love Graham and love helping him. And I don't think Graham would see it that way. It's just as far as like me being at fault, but I still kind of blame myself. And fortunately, though, the team at Disinfo liked what I did enough that they gave me another assignment. This being Daniele Bolelli's, religion book. During the course of doing all this, I got a little more involved with Disinfo. I was interested in podcasting. I'd tried my own for a few episodes and pitched that idea. So they resurrected the Disinfo podcast, which, by the way, the old episodes where it was just the disinformation podcast are great if you want to dig those up. Raymond Wiley and all those guys are fantastic. Anyway, so I started doing that, and there was a opportunity for me to start editing and writing. So naturally, I just kind of jumped in. And my boss, Gary Baddeley, has been wonderfully supportive of everything I've tried to do there. And I've tried to some people's displeasure and others' excitement, change the tone a little bit and work some different types of material in. I mean, how many times, let's put it this way. There are other websites that deal much better than I do, other people that deal much better than I do with, really deep conspiracy topics, like 9/11 and things like that. I'm not saying these aren't important. I'm just saying that, there are several websites, several podcasters that have this on lock, so I've got to do my own thing. We've got to do our own thing. Sure. And we touch on some of that, but we also touch on weird science, art, culture, strange news, paranormal, political activism. So I try to get a good mix in, and part of that is making sure that there's usually a story here or there that'll piss someone off, because I feel like if you're happy with everything, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I try and do with the IGC here, is just bring a lot of different opinions to the table, talk with a lot of different people and from a wide variety of different backgrounds. And so far it's been great, man. It's opened my perceptions and my horizons to ideas I didn't necessarily agree with, or it's kind of checked the beliefs that I already had. So I'm interested in why people
believe the things they do sometimes and what they believe, rather than whether it's strictly true or not.
I think it
pisses people off sometimes. Why didn't you challenge this guy about whatever? And like, well, because I'm not the Bill O'Reilly of weird news.
Sure.
I don't want to. I'm more interested in giving this person forum, and sometimes I'll dig deeper into things and see what they have to say. But as far as what I don't want to hear that. I don't want to get home and turn on an audio show and hear someone going, where the hell did you get this stupid idea?
That's kind of counterproductive.
You're an idiot,
I think.
Right? I don't want to do that. I don't want to debate things. I mean, otherwise it's the Matt Staggs Has Opinion show.
Right. And speaking of the different guests and conspiracy and all that, where do you draw the line between conspiracy theorists and conspiracy realists?
I don't.
Okay. Fair enough.
And I try not to. I think there are people that are very well educated about these topics and have more time to devote to them, and I let them do it. And getting into my different beliefs on these things would be very difficult. But I'm just not up on that stuff, or at least I've got other things I'm much more interested in. And I don't mean that as an insult to anybody. I just simply mean that, I'm not going to go to, I don't know, an English teacher and ask for help with, math, unless that's a really, special English teacher that wants to do more than one thing. I don't see myself as a teacher. It's just the first thing that came to mind. I've only got so much time and so many things to do with my life, and I've got to focus.
Sure. And some of these conspiracy theorists or realists, however you want to put it, they're labeled as pseudoscience and things like that. Do you feel that pseudoscience gets a bad rap, or how do you feel about that?
Well, that's funny because I think pseudoscience itself can be a pejorative label, and yesterday's pseudoscience becomes tomorrow's accepted fact. At one time, Troy was thought to be an entirely mythical place until someone started digging up ruins of Troy. I'm interested in the cultural perspective of certain things, and that's how I pursue them. And sure, sometimes pseudoscience does get a bad rap. Sometimes it's good that it gets a bad rap. I'm of the opinion that, if you're hurting people, then maybe, especially with no real scientific validity or gain for that person,
you put in check. You need to put them in check, basically.
Right. Exactly. But if you believe in UFOs, Bigfoot, or whatever, it's, I'm not going to attack you for it. And I'm interested in the, catalog of your beliefs, what it means to you, and how it reflects on culture as a whole. That's not me. I'm not, and some people do come after me for going, well, how can you promote this nonsense? And if you think I'm promoting anything, then you're not really paying attention.
Yeah, I'm sure you probably get looped into. I know I've listened to one of the podcasts where you were talking about the lizard people, and you were saying, I don't necessarily believe in everything that I talk about here. It's just it is what it is. If somebody wants to believe
it's not the Matt Staggs' opinion show,
and
Matt Staggs does, and surely my opinions, certainly can color things, but I try really hard. I think about Coast to Coast AM and things like that, where and that's not necessarily a model, but it's things that I go for, that in the sense that you're going to call in and nobody's going to be like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, which some of these guys, I could easily do that, and so could you as a listener. But I would rather, and I've thought about these things before when I'm listening to certain podcasts, I'll be hearing something and the guy will be like, now I know it's a book that said this. What was that book? And I'm sitting there going, it was whatever. It's The Pursuit of the Millennium by Norman Cohn. It's right here on my shelf. I know the book. Say the book. Say the book. And, you kind of interact a little bit. And if I have that moment with somebody where they're listening and they're going, no, or, you should have read this about that topic, or, or great, we're both in tune on this. I've not heard anybody discuss this before. Then I'm very happy.
Right. I think what's interesting is the new media that's coming out. Outside of social media, it's with the podcast especially. I was reading an article about it yesterday, and there's quite a few people out there that have got bigger podcasts. Speaking about Joe Rogan, Corolla, Dan Carlin. They were all quoted in there.
Very talented people that deserve the audience that they have.
Sure.
I listen to, of course, Joe all the time, and Dan Carlin's a big one, and Adam I'll listen to at night sometimes when I go to bed, because it's just like this awesome, kind of, it's structured like a radio show,
Right.
So, sometimes I'll fall asleep listening to Adam or, Dan Carlin, and, hopefully my brain picks up a little bit of information on the Mongols or whatever Adam's pet peeve this week is.
Makes for interesting dreams, I'm sure.
Sure.
What I think is interesting about that too, especially is, the typical model for everything has been broadcasting. You try and get your opinion to as many people as possible and try to piss off as the least amount of people as possible. Well, I think nowadays, especially with podcasts, it's almost like a narrowcasting where we're going for a small target audience that really wants to learn about some different things, and it obviously it's not for everybody. I try and do promotion
and I think
for my
that
stuff.
If you have an idea of what you're coming to get when you listen to a podcast, that's good. I'm not turning into Kevin Allison's wonderful podcast Risk, which I recommend to anybody, expecting a lecture on great culture. What I am expecting are true stories, some of which are hilarious. A lot of them are. And that's what I want to get. I don't want to turn into Dan Carlin and hear him discussing, what he had for lunch, or how to make a steak.
Sure.
It's good to know what you're getting. And that's, and that's important. It's important for everything. Joe's show, what you're getting with Joe's show. And of course, with Joe, he's such a wonderful guy and has a great personality, and that's going to, color everything you hear.
Absolutely.
At least that's half of the show.
He's been he's been an inspiration for,
Oh, absolutely.
Thousands,
absolutely.
Probably millions of people like myself.
Yeah. And I credit pretty much everything I've done in the past couple of years to Joe Rogan, for digging me out of a deep hole. And I mean the podcast,
How'd you hook up with Joe?
I just through mutual friends, and also just
what kind of circles you running in, Matt?
Weird ones. Mutual friends, mutual interest, and just trying to be as helpful and kind as possible to him and support the show and stuff like that. And, having a background. And, people have asked me, how do I get job A or job B that you're doing? And I totally understand where you're coming from, because I had the same questions as well. But the truth of the matter is you put in the time. I started writing for a magazine in like 90 something, and a local magazine, and got my start there. Did a bunch of PR work and publicity work, and scheduling and talent booking and things like that. And got on the internet and got in on the blog thing really early. So I've, it's been a minute. So it's nothing, and it's not a shortcut. And I used to feel like there was. I'd look at somebody doing something and go, well, they just got lucky. And maybe there is some of that. I certainly agree. But at the same time, it's, some people are just going to put the hours in and start now and kind of keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening as much as possible, and be true. Be true to yourself. Do what you like doing, and even if nobody ever catches on, you're gonna be happy. So I've done that, and that's where I've gotten to, and I think that's how a combination of those things is what got me and Joe talking. And I'm not kissing my boss's ass. I've got several bosses, but Joe is truly the guy you think he is. He's the guy on the podcast. He's a very good person. He's a prime example of he's talked about this before, lifting the gate, finding the hole in the gate and opening it, for cool people sure. He likes. He practices it, and I could never say anything negative about him.
And that's all I hear. That's all I ever hear about him as well. I don't hear
he's a good
another
person.
side of that.
He's a very self-aware person. He has absolutely zero attitude, and he's what you expect. And he's a great example of that, of doing what's important. So
I think you don't want to fire up his bullshit detector, but outside of that, I think he's probably.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't think, if you're, I think, being disingenuous. I think if you have some different ideas, right? and for the most part, of course he's, as far as opinions go, he's got them, and he's pretty respectful about, your opinions as well. I've sent him movie clips before, or I've seen a movie clip that he's seen and go, I didn't care for this at all. And he'd go, really? Because I thought it was hilarious, and it's okay,
Yep. Would you say that he is one of your inspirations for getting into jiu-jitsu?
Everything, yeah. Over the past couple of years, I was very much locked into a set of beliefs that didn't make me happy. I was doing a job that didn't make me happy. I didn't have many friends that I liked anymore, because I felt that some of the beliefs we had in common weren't there anymore. And I had a job I hated. I was putting on weight, and was very uptight and scared. And one of the things that got me into, or I was inspired to do, is everything. Exercising, being willing to explore different ideas and give people their day in court instead of wanting to immediately shuffle away anything that might. Yeah, right. And being more open about the things I liked and wanted to pursue. Jiu-jitsu is, of course, the most prominent of those things. I was 193 pounds. I'm 5'9" and have a very small frame. I'm a little guy. So when I started, I was well overweight, clumsy, weak, rubbery, flabby. and very insecure about a lot of things, very angry, very afraid. And, I'll tell you, one of the first memories I have from my childhood is being taken to a daycare and having a kid, what I would call now do full mount and shoveling sand into my mouth. Yeah. So I had some issues, and I didn't want people to touch me. And so I got into jujitsu, pushed myself into it. And also one of my best friends, Mike, who I had on the podcast recently, is interested in it as well and was instrumental in getting me in there. It went from something I was scared to do. First month, I'd feel a little bit of fear every time I'd start driving that way. I'd have to kind of force myself. But over time, it's turned into something that I'm very clearly obsessed with, and I get a lot out of. I've built confidence. I weigh 158 now, which is, I hover between like 155, 158, which for my size is a good weight. I look down sometimes, and again, I'm a little guy. I'm not too strong, but I'll look down at my arms and go, wait a minute. I'm starting to see veins there. Where did these come from? So I'm getting stronger. My balance is better. I have more confidence to deal with things. I don't worry constantly that someone's going to, hurt me. And I'm not angry in as much because I have an outlet for that stuff. Jiu-jitsu is like a crucible for the ego. You're not going to make it in there if you can't deal with defeat, if you can't come to terms with being weak, and having other people dominate you. Because I've even had people tell me before I got involved, it's like, that may not be the right martial art for you, because you're going to get like just defeated, owned for a full year at least. And they're right.
Sometimes that's what you need, though.
It is what I needed. And, again, I'm getting stronger, faster, more confident. Occasionally it's funny. I feel like the neurological system, neuromuscular network fires a little bit. It's like you can almost feel that spark ignite when I manage to, pull off a sweep, escape, or, God help me, a once in a blue moon submission. It's part of it is that you have to get to a point, and this is about anything, where you see something as not just a learning process, not just a skill you're learning, but a mindful meditation in perseverance and endurance, strength, dedication, and humility, because that's important as well. I sometimes think about that. When I'm going to class, I'll go, well, this is not just about me getting better on the mat. It's about me, sticking to something and, seeing if I can make it and becoming stronger, about 5 months in, I got my first stripe, which, it was an accomplishment, because if you know anything about jiu-jitsu, there's very slow advancement.
Yeah, you don't get your black belt in a year.
No, you get a black belt. My black belt instructor has been in almost 10 years, and he's getting his black belt very soon.
Right.
And he's his game is tight. So, yeah, right. Maybe that would have been if I'd been in another martial art, and I'm not saying any, I don't want to, criticize any, because they all have their benefits. That might have been my second belt. You know what I mean?
Sure. I have a background in Taekwondo, and it's a much different martial art. It's all stand up, and it's real fancy. I haven't taken it in quite a few years here, but since I've been listening to podcasts, and I've actually interviewed Nick Gabriel. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He used to co-host London Real. Now he's doing the Journey podcast that's coming out, so people tune into that if you're listening out there. But I talked to him. He's got the Jiu-Jitsu Brotherhood, and people like that that's something I really have a desire to do. Right now I have a lot of commitments that will be waning probably about November, but I have a place in town here that is on my list, and I'm planning on getting in there and
right. I can't tell you you'll find that at every place you go to, but with me it is a strong brotherhood, and of course right. There are sisters as well. We have a couple of women in our class that will freaking whip your ass.
Oh sure.
One of them is, and people say, oh, you're fighting with the girls. Like, look, you do not know. Go ahead and roll with somebody's purple belt, a woman with a purple belt, and you may be very surprised.
I'll get my ass handed. I know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a new student, and this is someone who's been doing martial arts for years and years, and I finally got a tap on this person after, 7 months of just beating the hell out of me. She's a great person. I've learned a lot from her, but that's one of the people I roll with a lot. And she, takes on everybody in the class, basically.
Right. Yeah, I think
so. It's not just me; it's big old dudes that have a problem.
Yeah, I think brotherhood's a real loose term, like intellectual or gentleman.
Yeah, that's how I use it. That's exactly how I use it, and you will find that in jiu-jitsu. I mean, I think it's part of the nature of the sport. You are, in contact with people. You fight full bore. Someone is trying to choke you out or snap an arm, lock a leg, and they're going to do it if you don't tap.
Right.
This is not point fighting. It's not light sparring. It is full on, and people don't realize that necessarily until they hit the mat, because you're going to get slammed and dominated. Real quick, you will learn that your ideas about fighting may not be what's the reality. And I think you can become a lot more peaceful because you realize, hey, this violence thing, I'm not so good at it. And it's not going to go down the way I think it is.
It never does. That's the thing.
It's something.
And you can
something
only train and be prepared for whatever comes. But a lot of these things, a lot of the motions that you go through, you'll never use until you use it, and then it's automatic.
I tell people sometimes, like, man, I got in a fight, 2 weeks ago, and then I got in another fight. It's like, what are you doing wrong? What exactly are you doing? Because if you're getting in fights all the time, there's something you're probably doing wrong. Because most of us can get through our day pretty well without being challenged. I like to think my first line of defense is just being a nice guy.
That's my
and having a healthy respect for other people.
Yep.
And not picking fights. So yeah, jiu-jitsu has been very important for me, and certainly I would not have even heard of it had it not been for Joe Rogan. And everything he says about it is right. But again, the nature of the sport is you're in contact with people, physical contact. You share a lot of trouble and injury, and my gi's got a little blood on it. It's mine, from when I got my lip busted a week ago. You sweat, together, you fight together, you train together, and you build a tight bond. And it's with all kinds of different types of people from all walks of life, all kinds of background, all ages. Jiu-jitsu is one of those sports you can continue to practice. And by the way, just because I say sport, it doesn't mean it's not a combat system. It's both. But you can continue to pursue it for, your whole life.
Yeah, I saw on Facebook you posted, there's a guy that's in his 90s.
Helio Gracie.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, one of the founders, or the founder of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, that guy
Nick
was
talking
rolling his whole
about
life.
Hodger. Yeah, one of his descendants, I'm sure.
Yeah, and the thing about it is
Black
that he had said, and you can read him, he's like, I developed Jiu-Jitsu so the smaller person can have a chance against the bigger, stronger person. And it does work. I've tapped out, and again, I was lucky the other person wasn't experienced, and it's not my goal. My main goals right now are have fun, keep it playful, and learn escapes, sweeps, that kind of thing. Because it's as much fun, or maybe funner for me, when somebody just can't keep me in one spot.
Right.
It's like trying to hold a slippery eel in their hands. I love that. It's like they're chasing me, and I'm like, going woo woo, sliding around like a cartoon. But I've tapped out a couple of really big young guys that are football players or whatever, and they're used to, absolutely dominating someone. And it's all, in your balance, your hips, and your patience. Helio talked about cooking people, meaning that you just wear them down, let them fight and fight and fight and fight until they're tired, and then you submit them.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important that you brought up. It's almost like a meditation. I've been a daily meditation practitioner for over 10 years, and
anything can be, as long as you get into the psychology of flow, i.e., you're completely involved in the process.
Exactly. So I do sitting meditation, I do walking meditation, and when I run, that's almost like a meditation as well. Mine is, I consider it more traditional type of meditation, but anything you get involved with where your focus is 100%, and you're right, you get into that flow state, I consider that a meditation.
Sure. So. And I think it's part of, you've got to be happy. You've got to, and that's part of it, finding a transcendence from the reality of everyday life.
Yeah, you're not going to find it in something you don't like, for sure.
Yeah, sure. And, that's absolutely part of what I consider developing your personal narrative, your own mythology of things that are important to you, and where they fit into your life, and finding meaning, and maybe it's not, I think it's not necessarily that you need to share it with people. It's like I have this sort of, idea of, well, these certain things mean something to me. They're personal talismans that may not mean anything at all to you, but I've worked it into my own kind of mental landscape or spiritual landscape, if you want to call it that, legends, myths, items from your life. I mean, I've got some weird stuff. I've got a Hammerhead action figure, Star Wars from like the 70s,
Right on.
and, these don't have to be physical mementos. They're just ideas that mean something, or you find meaning in them. They don't have to be true, except true in the sense that they're part of your landscape and develop a framework and keep you going.
Yep. All right. Well, on that note, I think we should wrap it up here. I know you got to get going. Why don't you tell our listeners here where they could find you and the disinfo and all that stuff, if you would?
I live in a small neighborhood, and I'm going to let me give you the address. No, you can find me at www.disinfo.com. I'm usually there several times a day. By the way, if you comment, it's a lot of times, and it doesn't appear because it's gotten caught up in our discus filter. I usually get a few comments every week saying, "You're censoring me." And it's like, look, man, it's not, You can also find me on Twitter, and this is where I am constantly. I'm always on Twitter all day, all night.
You're pretty active on social media. Yeah.
I love Twitter. I'm at MATTST. That's T as in Tyrannosaurus Rex, AGGS. I'm the host of the Disinfocast, which you can find on iTunes, Stitcher, and you can directly download from the site if you want to do that instead. I try to keep in touch. If you want to talk to me, I'm going to be there to try to talk to you. I can't always talk all day, but I love shooting the shit, sharing ideas. The only time I ever just don't talk to people is when they're log in and fuck you, or. Or just like I can't stand it when people like tell you to do things like go do this right now, unless they mean it in like a fun sort of way, which some people do.
Exactly.
But otherwise, I'm there for you.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when I found the Disinfocast, but it has become one of my staple podcasts. So appreciate all the work you're doing with it.
We've got a lot of support from you guys, the other podcasts in the community, and I'll certainly mention this one soon. So
appreciate that, Matt.
Yeah, well, it's all, hey, we're all in this together. Maybe it's not the Jiu-Jitsu Brotherhood, but it's
Podcast Brotherhood.
Yeah, Podcast Brotherhood of weird minds.
You got it, buddy. All right, well, our music is brought to you by Secrets. You can find his free tracks on SoundCloud. Please go ahead and check out our website at www.intellectualgentlemansclub.com. The blog is there. The podcast is there. Everybody involved who's been on a podcast is in there. You can subscribe on iTunes. We're on Stitcher, many other podcast directories, Facebook. With the page is just Intellectual Gentlemen's Club after facebook.com/whatever. We're at Twitter at IGCcast. And please, if you want to support and you like what we're doing here, give us that PayPal button, onit.com, and Yahoo. I don't think I mentioned what Onit is exactly, but most people are aware of what it is. It's a total human optimization company. They sell nootropics, fitness equipment, sustainable foods, all kinds of cool stuff is on there. So I recommend checking them out. So until next time, I want to just say thanks again, Matt, for being with us today. And thanks for everybody out there listening. And we'll talk to you guys again soon. Hang loose out there.